Most people don't lose strength in their legs first. They lose the systems keeping those legs alive. And by the time you feel the heaviness, the hesitation, the grab for the wall, the breakdown may have been unfolding for years. But one silent cause of leg failure after 60 hides where almost no one looks, and the first fruit that may help stop it is probably not the one you'd guess. If you're serious about taking better care of your health, make sure you subscribe. I share simple, practical advice designed especially for seniors, and feel free to leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I appreciate every one of you. Let's get back to it. What if weak legs after 60 aren't really about weak legs at all? What if the real problem starts somewhere most people never think to look, and by the time the legs begin to show it, the damage has already been building for years? Most seniors assume it's simple. Muscles age, legs weaken. That's life. But here's what that assumption gets wrong. Muscle aging doesn't explain everything. Research shows that adults can begin losing 3 to 8% of muscle mass per decade, starting as early as age 30. Yet two people with the same muscle loss can have dramatically different leg function. One walks confidently, one grabs walls. So, what's the real difference? That question led researchers to look beyond the muscle itself. And what they found changes everything about how we should think about leg strength after 60. Because in many cases, the legs are the last place the problem begins. The trouble starts earlier, quieter. In systems most people never connect to movement at all. It starts when blood vessels lose the flexibility to deliver oxygen efficiently to working muscles. It starts when nerve signals, the electrical commands that tell your muscles to fire, hold, balance, step, begin losing their sharpness. It starts when low-grade inflammation settles silently into muscle tissue, slowing repair after every ordinary day of use. And it starts when the nutritional gaps that feed these systems go unaddressed for years. Not because people don't care, but because no one told them what to look for. Here's what makes this so important to understand. By the time most seniors notice something is wrong, the signs have usually been whispering for a long time. Stairs that feel steeper than they used to. A walk that ends sooner than it should. A moment of hesitation before standing up. A hand reaching for the wall, just in case. These aren't random signs of getting older. They may be the late signals of a quiet systems failure that started long before the legs ever felt it. And this is where today's conversation becomes something different. Because if weak legs aren't simply caused by aging, then there may be more within your reach than anyone has told you. Research has begun linking 5 ordinary fruits, not supplements, not prescriptions, to meaningful support for circulation, nerve health, inflammation control, and the muscle signaling that powers every step you take. Each one targets a different piece of the hidden breakdown, and together they tell a story about leg strength that most seniors never hear. We're going to go through all 5 today, but the first one works in a way that will genuinely surprise you, because most people reach for it thinking about one thing, and science suggests it may be doing something far more important underneath the surface. Something that has everything to do with whether your legs stay strong or slowly start to fail. Before we talk about this fruit, there is something you need to understand about legs that almost nobody explains. Your legs are the furthest point from your heart. Every beat your heart makes has to push blood all the way down, through miles of vessels, past dozens of branching pathways, just to reach the muscles that keep you standing, walking, and moving through your day. That journey gets harder with age. Vessels stiffen, walls lose elasticity. Blood moves slower, less efficiently, with more resistance than it once did. And the muscles at the end of that long journey, they start arriving late to work, fatiguing faster, recovering slower, feeling heavier with less reason. Most seniors call that aging. But what if a significant part of that is simply delivery failure? This is where pomegranate stops being a trendy juice and starts being something worth paying serious attention to. Here is what the research shows. Pomegranates are dense with a specific class of plant compounds called polyphenols, and among their most studied effects is something that happens inside blood vessel walls. These compounds have been linked to increased nitric oxide availability in the body, Nitric oxide is a molecule your blood vessels use as a signal to relax and expand. When that signal is strong, vessels open wider. Blood flows with less resistance. Oxygen and nutrients reach muscles more efficiently, including the leg muscles that depend on that delivery to function at their best. A study published in the Journal of Nutritional Science found that pomegranate extract was associated with measurable improvements in blood flow and a reduction in arterial stiffness, which is essentially the vessel rigidity that slows circulation as we age. Separate research exploring athletic performance found that pomegranate supplementation was linked to better oxygen delivery during physical exertion and improved time to muscle fatigue. Not bigger muscles, better supplied muscles. That distinction should stop you cold, because if your legs feel heavy on a walk, they used to handle easily. If standing up from a low chair takes more out of you than it should, if your feet feel cold or your legs feel sluggish without obvious reason, the issue may not be that your muscles have weakened. The issue may be that your muscles are being starved of what they need to perform. And something sitting in the produce section of your local grocery store, affordable, accessible, and widely available, may support the very vascular system responsible for that delivery. That is not a small thing. But here is the part most people miss entirely. Even if blood flow improves dramatically, even if circulation delivers everything your muscles need right on schedule, your legs can still fail you, because there is a second system running beneath all of this, one that has nothing to do with blood, and everything to do with electricity. Electricity. That is what movement actually is before it becomes anything else. Before your leg lifts, before your foot lands, before your body shifts its weight from one side to the other, your nervous system has already fired a signal. A precise high-speed electrical command traveling from your brain, down your spinal cord, and out through a branching network of nerves that reach into every muscle fiber in your legs. That signal tells the muscle when to contract, how hard to contract, when to release, when to hold. And when that system is working the way it should, movement feels natural, automatic, trustworthy. But here is what aging does to that system that almost nobody talks about. It slows it down. Not dramatically at first. Just enough to make reactions feel slightly delayed. Just enough to make balance feel slightly less certain. Just enough that catching yourself, when you stumble, when the ground shifts unexpectedly, when you step off a curb that was lower than you thought, takes a fraction of a second longer than it used to. And that fraction of a second is where falls begin. Research has shown that oxidative stress, the accumulation of cellular damage driven by unstable molecules called free radicals, plays a significant role in the aging of peripheral nerves. A landmark review published in Free Radical Biology and Medicine identified oxidative damage as one of the primary drivers of nerve conduction decline in older adults, directly linking it to reduced muscle coordination and balance instability. In plain language, when nerves are under oxidative attack, the signals they send get weaker, slower, and less precise, and the legs feel it first. This is where kiwi becomes one of the most underestimated fruits in a senior's diet, because kiwi is extraordinarily dense in vitamin C, one of the most well-studied antioxidants in the human body. A single kiwi contains more vitamin C than an orange, and vitamin C plays a direct role in neutralizing the free radicals that research has linked to nerve degradation over time. But that is only part of the story. Kiwi also contains potassium, a mineral that participates directly in the electrochemical process nerves use to generate and transmit signals. Without adequate potassium, that process becomes less efficient. Signals lose their clarity. Muscles receive instructions that are slightly off, slightly late, slightly weak, slightly mistimed, and over months and years, that miscommunication compounds. What begins as occasional unsteadiness becomes a pattern. What begins as a pattern becomes a limitation. What becomes a limitation quietly starts rewriting what a person believes they are still capable of doing. Now, here is the part most seniors never consider. Most of the conversation around leg strength focuses on protein. Build the muscle, feed the muscle, protect the muscle, and protein absolutely matters. But a muscle that receives poor nerve signals will underperform regardless of how well it is built. You can have strong, well-nourished muscle fibers and still move with hesitation, instability, and reduced confidence if the communication system driving those muscles is deteriorating. Kiwi addresses something protein cannot. It works at the level of the signal itself, and when signals are cleaner, sharper, and more reliable, balance improves, coordination steadies. Movement feels more like something you own again, rather than something you manage. But even perfect nerve signaling runs into a wall when inflammation moves in and starts breaking down what the nerves are trying to protect. And that is a battle happening silently in more seniors than anyone realizes. Inflammation gets talked about a lot, but rarely in the context of leg strength. And that gap in the conversation may be costing seniors more than they realize. Here is what most people picture when they hear inflammation: redness, swelling, and injury healing. Something visible, something temporary, something that goes away. But there is another kind of inflammation entirely, one you cannot see, one you may not feel directly, one that produces no obvious swelling, no dramatic pain, no clear signal that anything is wrong. Scientists call it chronic low-grade inflammation, and research has identified it as one of the most significant and most overlooked drivers of muscle decline in older adults. A major study published in the journals of gerontology found that elevated inflammatory markers, specifically a protein called C-reactive protein, were strongly associated with accelerated muscle loss and reduced physical function in adults over 60. In other words, inflammation doesn't just make muscles sore. Over time, it may make them disappear. And here is the mechanism most people never hear. Chronic inflammation interferes directly with muscle protein synthesis, the biological process your body uses to repair and rebuild muscle tissue after use. Every time you walk, climb stairs, or carry something, your muscles sustain microscopic damage. Under normal conditions, your body repairs that damage overnight, rebuilds, strengthens. But when inflammation is chronically elevated, that repair process slows. Muscles break down faster than the body can rebuild them, and the result looks exactly like weakness, even when the real problem is recovery failure. This distinction is enormous, because most seniors trying to maintain leg strength focus entirely on activity. Walk more, move more, stay active, all of which is correct. But activity creates the demand for repair. And if the repair system is compromised, activity alone cannot close the gap. This is where Tart cherries enter with research behind them that is genuinely striking. Tart cherries are among the most concentrated natural sources of anthocyanins, the pigment compounds responsible for their deep red color, and the subject of a growing body of anti-inflammatory research. A study from the Scandinavian Journal of Medicine and Science in Sports found that tart cherry consumption was associated with significantly faster muscle recovery and reduced inflammatory markers following intense physical exertion. Another study found that older adults consuming tart cherry juice reported reduced muscle soreness and improved functional recovery compared to a placebo group. Not younger athletes, older adults, people whose recovery systems were already working against time. So, if your legs feel heavier than yesterday's activity should explain, if morning stiffness lingers longer than it once did, if soreness arrives faster and leaves slower, inflammation may be quietly sabotaging the repair process your legs depend on. Tart. Cherries may not eliminate that, but research suggests they may meaningfully support the recovery side of the equation most seniors are missing entirely. The strength side gets all the attention. Recovery is where legs are actually preserved. But even recovered muscles cannot carry you far if the energy powering them starts running out. And that is a problem far more common than anyone admits. There is a conversation about leg weakness that almost never happens. Not in doctors' offices, not in fitness advice for seniors, not in most health content targeting people over 60. And it is this: sometimes legs don't fail because they are weak. Sometimes they fail because they are exhausted. There is a difference, a significant one. Weakness is a structural problem, muscle fibers that have thinned, atrophied, lost their capacity. Exhaustion is an energy problem, muscle fibers that are present, intact, potentially capable, but running on insufficient fuel to perform the way they should. And in older adults, that energy problem often comes from somewhere deep inside the cell itself, inside structures called mitochondria. Mitochondria are the energy-producing engines inside every muscle cell. Their job is to take oxygen and nutrients delivered by the bloodstream and convert them into usable cellular fuel, a molecule called ATP that powers every muscular contraction you make. When mitochondria are healthy and abundant, muscles generate energy efficiently. Movement feels sustainable, stamina holds. But research published in the Journal of Physiology has shown that mitochondrial density and function decline measurably with age, and that this decline is directly linked to reduced exercise capacity and increased leg fatigue in older adults. In plain terms, aging muscles don't just shrink, they lose their ability to generate power from the fuel they receive, and legs that tire fast, that feel heavy after short distances, that seem to run out of steam long before the rest of you is ready to stop, may be reflecting that energy deficit more than any structural weakness. This is where oranges enter the conversation from an angle most people completely overlook. The immediate association most people have with oranges is vitamin C and immunity. But vitamin C plays a biochemical role that extends far beyond immune defense. It is essential for the synthesis of carnitine, a compound the body uses to transport fatty acids into mitochondria for energy conversion. Without adequate carnitine synthesis, mitochondria cannot access fat as a fuel source efficiently. Energy production slows. Muscles fatigue faster than they structurally should. A review published in Nutrients confirmed that vitamin C deficiency is associated with increased fatigue, reduced physical performance, and impaired mitochondrial energy metabolism. Findings particularly relevant for older adults whose dietary intake of vitamin C is often lower than recommended. But oranges bring something else to the table that directly supports leg function. Collagen. Vitamin C is the primary nutritional cofactor required for collagen synthesis in the body. And collagen is not just skin deep. It is the structural protein woven through tendons, ligaments, and the connective tissue that holds the entire mechanical architecture of the leg together. Without adequate collagen support, that architecture weakens. Tendons lose tensile strength, joints lose cushioning. The structural scaffolding around muscle loses integrity. Strong muscle fibers operating inside a weakening structural framework will still produce unstable, unreliable movement. The orange addresses both problems simultaneously: cellular energy production, structural tissue support. Two separate mechanisms, one accessible, affordable fruit. And when energy returns to muscles that have been quietly running below capacity, something remarkable often follows. Walks feel less like effort. Stairs feel less like obstacles. The legs begin to feel like something that belongs to you again, rather than something you are simply managing. But even with energy restored, circulation improved, nerves supported, and inflammation addressed, there remains one final hidden vulnerability, one that strikes without warning, usually at night, and most seniors have already felt it, without ever understanding what it was actually telling them. It happens in the middle of the night. No warning, no buildup. Just a sudden violent tightening in the calf or the foot. A cramp so intense it pulls you straight out of deep sleep and leaves you gripping your leg in the dark, waiting for it to release. Most seniors who experience this write it off. Dehydration, they tell themselves, overexertion. Just one of those things. But what if that nighttime cramp is not random at all? What if it is actually your leg muscles sending a signal, a desperate, unmistakable signal, that something in the communication system controlling them has gone wrong? Because here is what most people never understand about muscle cramps. A cramp is not a muscle failing to relax. It is a muscle receiving a signal it cannot stop responding to. The muscle fires, and keeps firing, because the electrochemical system that should be telling it to release has lost its balance. And at the center of that electrochemical system is a mineral most seniors are chronically under-consuming: potassium. Potassium is not simply a nutrient, it is an electrical currency. Every time a nerve signal reaches a muscle fiber, potassium ions move across the cell membrane, creating the charge differential that allows the fiber to contract and then critically to release. When potassium levels are insufficient, that release mechanism becomes unreliable. Muscles contract more easily than they relax. Signals misfire. Contractions become less coordinated. Fatigue arrives faster. And in the quiet of the night, when the body is still and the system has no activity to mask its imbalance, cramps announce themselves with a clarity that is impossible to ignore. Research published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition found that potassium deficiency is significantly more prevalent in adults over 60 than in younger populations, and that low potassium status is associated with reduced muscle function, increased cramping frequency, and measurably faster muscular fatigue during physical activity. This is where bananas step forward as something far more targeted than most people appreciate. A single medium banana delivers approximately 422 milligrams of potassium, along with magnesium, vitamin B6, and natural carbohydrates that support the energy environment muscles need to signal correctly. Not a supplement, not a prescription, a fruit, available everywhere, inexpensive, requiring nothing more than peeling. And when potassium levels are consistently supported, the difference in how leg muscles perform, recover, and respond can be felt in ways that surprise people who never connected the two. Fewer cramps, steadier contractions, more reliable movement throughout the day. Now step back for a moment, because across these 5 fruits, something larger has been revealed. Blood flow, nerve signaling, inflammation control, cellular energy, muscle communication. 5 separate systems. 5 separate vulnerabilities, 5 ordinary fruits, each addressing a different hidden piece of the breakdown. But knowing about 5 fruits is only half the story, because there is a mistake most seniors make even when they eat well, and it may be quietly undoing everything. Here is something most health content never tells you. Knowing the right foods is not enough, not even close, because the most common reason seniors eat reasonably well and still lose mobility, still feel their legs weakening, still find themselves grabbing walls and shortening walks, is not ignorance about nutrition. It is inconsistency. And inconsistency is a silent killer of every biological system we have spent the last several chapters discussing. Think about what was revealed across these 5 fruits. Pomegranate supporting nitric oxide production. But nitric oxide is not stored. It is produced continuously, in response to ongoing nutritional input. Miss that input for days at a time, and the vascular benefit evaporates. Kiwi supporting antioxidant defense against nerve degradation. But oxidative stress is also continuous. Free radicals do not take breaks, which means antioxidant support cannot take breaks either. Tart cherries supporting the inflammatory environment around muscle tissue. But inflammation is not a single event. It is a chronic condition requiring consistent daily management. Oranges supporting mitochondrial energy production and collagen synthesis, both of which are ongoing. Biological processes that depend on regular vitamin C availability to function at their best. Bananas supporting the electrochemical balance behind muscle signaling. But potassium is water-soluble. The body does not store large reserves. It must be replenished consistently through diet. Are you seeing the pattern? Every single mechanism these fruits support is a continuous biological process, not a one-time fix, not a monthly intervention, not something that responds to occasional effort. These are systems that run every hour of every day, and they perform at the level you consistently fuel them. A review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that dietary consistency, not dietary perfection, was the strongest nutritional predictor of preserved physical function in adults over 65. Not superfoods eaten occasionally, not perfect eating on some days, and neglect on others. Consistency. Small, repeated daily choices stacking silently on top of each other, either building towards stronger legs or quietly accelerating their decline. And this is where most seniors unknowingly make the critical mistake. They treat food as a reaction rather than a foundation. They reach for better nutrition when they feel a symptom, when the cramp wakes them, when the walk becomes too short, when the stairs become too steep. But by the time symptoms appear, the systems behind them have usually been struggling for months. The wiser approach, the approach research increasingly supports, is to protect the foundation before the cracks appear. not to reverse decline dramatically, but to slow it meaningfully, because there is an enormous difference between legs that decline rapidly and legs that remain functional, reliable, and yours, well into the decades ahead. And that difference is often built not in dramatic moments of effort, but in ordinary daily choices most people underestimate, which brings us to the real conversation. The one this was always building toward. Let's be honest about what this was really about. It was never about fruit, not truly. Pomegranate, kiwi, tart cherries, oranges, bananas. These were never the point in themselves. They were doorways. Doorways into a conversation about something far more important than nutrition. Something most seniors think about quietly, privately, in moments they rarely share with anyone. The fear of losing independence. Not the fear of illness exactly, not even the fear of pain. The specific, deeply personal fear of becoming someone who needs help standing up. Someone who cannot trust their own legs to carry them safely from one room to the next. Someone who looks at a flight of stairs and feels something they never expected to feel. Hesitation. That fear is real, it is valid, and it deserves to be taken seriously. Because independence is not just a convenience, it is dignity. It is the ability to wake up in the morning and move through your own life on your own terms, without asking permission from your body, without negotiating with your limitations, without depending on another person for the movements that used to feel like nothing at all. And here is what this entire conversation has been quietly building toward. That independence is not preserved in dramatic moments. It is preserved, or surrendered, in the ordinary ones, in what you consistently put on your plate, in whether circulation is being supported daily or neglected daily, in whether the nerves controlling your movement are being protected or left to oxidative erosion, in whether inflammation is being addressed before it compounds or ignored until it becomes the reason recovery stops working, in whether the energy systems powering your legs are being nourished or quietly running below the level that makes movement feel effortless. These are not medical interventions. They are daily decisions, small, accessible, requiring nothing extraordinary. And research from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health has found that older adults who maintain consistent anti-inflammatory, nutrient-dense dietary patterns show significantly slower rates of physical function. Decline compared to those with inconsistent dietary habits. Not zero decline, slower decline. And slower decline means more years of climbing your own stairs, more years of walking where you want to walk, more years of rising from a chair without a second thought, more years of living in your body as a home, rather than a limitation. So, the question to carry forward from today is not which fruit to buy first. The question is this: are the daily choices you are making right now quietly building the foundation for legs that will carry you confidently through the years ahead? Or are they slowly, invisibly, making that future harder to reach? Because the body keeps an honest record of everything, and it responds faithfully, consistently, to whatever you repeatedly give it. The foundation for strong legs tomorrow is being built or neglected today, and today is always the right time to start building it. Thanks for watching all the way through. Staying informed is key to living a healthier, longer life. If you want more simple, practical health advice, make sure you subscribe and tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a comment and rate this from 1 to 10. Your feedback helps me create better guidance for you.